Well, this gentleman says, Dan, I'm 50 years old. I'm contemplating returning back to school to pursue my passion to be a counselor. In my research thus far, it looks like a graduate degree in counseling would cost approximately $35,000 to $40,000. What drives my passion is wanting to help people get from a state of brokenness to wholeness. I especially want to work with children who have been sexually abused. I believe I need formal education training to counsel those abused, and I'm concerned about incurring such a cost, especially at 50 years old. Well, here's how you look at getting advanced degrees. There's two reasons for getting advanced degrees. One is so you get a piece of paper so somebody will give you a job. Number two is for the learning that takes place. Now, if you do it for reason number one alone, typically people end up disappointed. They get an MBA, they get a master's in English Lit, and all of a sudden they're flipping hamburgers at McDonald's because they thought the paper itself would open the doors of opportunity to fame and fortune. And that doesn't happen a lot of times. So value the educational process, but be careful about putting yourself in major debt just to get the learning. Now, in your case, there's a lot of learning you could certainly do without being in an academic program, but I agree, if you want a job where you're counseling people, as you describe here, you probably do need at least a master's in counseling. But there are so many programs available. Be creative and be open to things that you consider. I mean, I live right here in the Nashville area. We are rich with academic universities. There are 17 universities within a stone's throw of where I'm sitting talking this morning. There are a lot of options. And I'm sure there are programs where you could get a master's without that being $35,000 to $40,000. Here's another rule of thumb. Never borrow more money for academic degrees than you could reasonably expect to make in your first year of working. Now, in your case, I don't think that's unreasonable. I think that you could expect certainly to generate $35,000 to $40,000 in a first year of working as a degreed certified counselor. But what I don't want to see is somebody going to school and ends up with $130,000 in debt, and now they are a counselor, a school teacher, a social worker, where they're going to make $30,000 or $40,000 a year. Don't do that. Now, the other thing is, when you say it will cost, it doesn't mean that you need to borrow the money or go into debt that much. When I went back to school to get my master's in clinical psychology, I never incurred a penny of debt. I talked to the school, got a teaching assistantship in place, which meant that they waived my tuition and paid me a small stipend every month for teaching a couple classes. If you have experience in this area already, look for opportunities to do that. I mean, schools are really, they're scrambling to get students enrolled. I mean, they need to keep things going because that's what makes a school work. They're selling a product, they're selling a service. So don't think that you just need to show up and just write a big check for their tuition. There are a lot of creative ways to waive tuition. Look for ways that you could barter services, where you could work in the counseling center at the school as you're going through. Or just simply get a position where you're working and you just live on a minimal kind of budget for your personal expenses and pay the tuition as you go, so you don't actually incur any debt. That's really what I would encourage you to do. Just get creative about that, but if that's a goal of yours, you're 50 years old, you're certainly not too old. If it takes you 2 years or 3 years to get a degree, 2 or 3 years down the road, you're still going to be young in terms of a working lifetime and contributions that you can make. People often tell me, oh my gosh, I'm 27 years old, I chose the wrong major in college, so now I'm just destined to kind of coast down into the grave because I made a wrong decision. Certainly not. That's a horrible perspective. I tell people often, do whatever you want to for the first 50 years of your life. If at that point you can sit down, take a fresh look at how God has gifted you, create a clear focus, you can then go into the most productive 2 decades of your life. That's the way that we see this played out, more than somebody who has it all figured out and knocked it out of the park at 26 years old. That's a rarity. That's why it gets attention. So don't think you're too old if you're just now at 50 years old figuring out what it is you really want to do as your life's greatest work. Do it, get equipped to do it effectively, and enjoy the most productive, fulfilling, meaningful, prosperous years of your life.